to me.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Trace. How should I start? Okay, maybe I'll talk a little bit about how Singapore's graffiti scene began. We're not really as old as how it started off in the West, like in the US and Europe. For Singapore, I can say that the scene pretty much grew around late 90s, mid 90s actually, around 96. There were already about two crews, two collectives who are still working on graffiti now, namely Operation Hardcore, OAC, and ZNC. Oh, there's three actually, and also TAC. ZNC stands for Zinc Night Crew, and TAC is Titan Aerosol Creations. So these crews have been around, but due to the popularity of the art itself, they've been pretty much underground until probably around mid 2004, when we began having a lot of street festivals. There were a lot of art awareness programs, including even in LaSalle. So yeah, I guess it's about less than 20 years old now. I've been doing graffiti myself since about 2000, and yeah, I started off basically as a tagger, as a painter painting the streets. But what I'm presenting right now is my current body of works, which are more prominent, and because I've been doing a lot of commercial works, and this is the style that I am sticking to for now. So okay, this is my moniker. It's a mix of leet speak and normal language. Like when like hacker language, they replace alphabets with numbers, so it reads Trace 1. This was a series that I've been working. I've been working on this series since 2009. Is it slideshow? Okay, this series is called Shadows and Scars. Basically, when I started dabbling with graffiti and street art, I was thinking about concepts, because concept to me is one of the things that really makes a piece stand out. Because imagine having like thousands of graffiti artists, and each of us is tagging our pieces. What makes our pieces stand out is particularly a concept besides style. So while I was like experimenting with concepts, I practiced. I tried out painting stencils as well, and so I started out even thinking about my roots, how I began when I was probably in my teens. I was skateboarding basically, and that's technically how I got started into this whole street culture of skateboarding, riding BMX, and so this series is sort of a tribute to how I started off. So I went around cutting stencils of skateboarders, and I went around painting them over objects on the streets and shadows. Why the series is called Shadows and Scars is because I wanted these stencils to interact with the urban landscape, like shadows, scars on the walls, chips and objects. So yeah, these stencils were actually quite small, about A4, A3 sizes, and they've been all over. Actually, there's quite a few of them. This is one of the bigger pieces that I was working on. It's life size. And then I moved on to trying out different objects like monkeys, because as I walk around town, particularly in Singapore, you see a lot of trees, and the shadows that they cast at night are more interesting. Yeah, so for me, that's the thing that I like to work on, the concept of interactivity. Even when if I were to paint on a canvas, I do not like to basically just paint on a canvas, because to me the canvas, it has a lot of character in its own, and it should be part of the artwork itself, besides being just purely a surface to paint on. Okay, this is a mixture of my old canvases. So this is roughly how it looks like in the day. It's quite a boring piece actually, but as the night comes, it will have a different dialogue altogether when all the shadows are cast, and it's perfectly placed along with the sensors. Yeah, as I mentioned about site-specific and having a purpose of my art being in a certain location. This is one of the commissions that I recently did. It's by OCBC. Okay. Yeah, basically the idea is to present. Okay, this project was actually commissioned by OCBC. They wanted me to present something unique about graffiti, something about the culture itself, either local or overseas. So what I came up with is this concept of a collective of people. Actually, they're all me, but they're climbing on top of one another. This sort of practice is actually quite famous in Brazil. They very much practice there, but actually not until about 5 people, maybe 2 or 3 the most usually.
Picture sound.
Sorry?
Picture sound.
Ah yes, picture sound. They just climb and try to reach the highest that they can. So that's one of the unique characteristics about graffiti that I like to present. This is actually along 6th Avenue, Bukit Timah. OCBC 6th Avenue. This is another project at W Residencies in Sentosa. It has the same quality about interactivity and how the pieces fit the location. This mural is actually located along a linking bridge between 2 apartments. So the idea of having that link is actually to connect the residences together to probably come and talk and hang out. So I came out with this concept of having that communication, an old school communication tool where they have like milk cans and cables talking to another person on the other end. So this kid is actually in the middle of the bridge, and this lady is on the other side. So it's actually a long piece, and it's actually quite narrow, so I can't take a full frontal shot. So off the streets, this series is based on canvas works shown in galleries. I try to implement the same concept that I work on the streets onto the canvases that I work on. So I have all these figures. I mainly work on self-portraits and figures of myself, working on the objects on the surface. So if you see from this series, most of the the figures are working on the canvas itself. So it gives that canvas a certain characteristics rather than just basically a surface to paint on. These works are part of my solo exhibition. The concept of the show was called Freedom. For me, I believe that sometimes paintings on canvases, they do not have to really just be a painting on canvas. It's sort of like painting should really speak to, besides speaking to an audience, it should like interact between the subject and the object. So in this series, there's a lot of like the past series, the past paintings. They're all about how the artist interacts with the surface, and the figure interacts with his environment. And so all the paintings are trying to imply that the artist is trying to move away or get out of his environment, something like stepping out of the box. And sometimes I like to touch on like political issues, talking about freedom, but then we are controlled by like certain red lines and red tape. And eventually also, street artists like us, we always need more space. But he ran out of space for the last letter. That's about it. Actually, we should really keep this open. I mean, if you have questions anytime along the way, you can just shout it out or raise a hand, and we can keep this dialogue to and fro.